Rich Beem is with us. You're there, Rich?
I am.
Excellent. Good. So we want to talk to you. Firstly, we'll get you to cast an eye back on the long 2019 golfing season that's been, and you've obviously been there at the forefront of a lot of it for Sky Sports. We might start with Atlanta. Here's Rory McIlroy talking to ESPN after his win at the Tour Championship.
Going into the final round, one behind, getting into that final group with Brooks Koepka was big for me. Brooks got one over on me in Memphis a few weeks ago. So I was relishing the opportunity to try and get him back again today. So and I think, we both started pretty solidly, and then Brooks made a mistake on the 7th hole this afternoon, and I capitalized on that. This is definitely my most consistent season that I've ever played. Brooks has played wonderful golf this year. He's the #1 player in the world. But I feel pretty happy about my season.
You were in the final group last year, 2018, with Tiger Woods. Contrast the scenes between being a spectator to what happened last year and a champion coming up this year.
It was a wonderful opportunity for me to try and, have a little bit of redemption. I didn't put up my best stuff against Tiger last year, and I didn't really put up a fight. So the one thing I was going to do today was put up a fight against Brooks.
So, Rich, much has been made of McIlroy this year when he's been under pressure, not least at Portrush, the Masters, not least a month ago in the WGC when he was in the final round with Brooks Koepka, and to use McIlroy's word, Koepka dominated him. So it felt important for him, actually, against Koepka in the final group to put in the performance that he put in.
It was massive for him to go out there and to kind of, as he said, get redemption. What I saw in Memphis was a player that went out there Saturday, shot an extraordinarily easy round of golf, and went out there on Sunday and was just kind of waiting for the golf course to present itself to him. And it never did, and he just didn't go out there and grasp the golf course and grasp the tournament. And I think that ate at him. I think that he probably recognized that somewhere, because let's face it, the game to Rory, he makes it look easy because I think it is easy, but he's no different than any other great player. You got to go out, you got to take some chances, and you really have to bear down. And what I saw, and I think what we all saw at Sky Sports on Sunday, was when they were finishing the third round, he had a different look to him. There was something in his eyes, and Wayne Riley, Radar, said that. He made note of it very early on Sunday when they were finishing up their third round. He just looked like a man that was on a mission. And it was never going to be easy because the golf course is so difficult. But you could see there was something different in Rory. He made a couple of unbelievable par saves early or late in that third round when he needed it. And that carried over to the final round. And it was a complete change. It looked like Brooks wanted to win, but his game wasn't there. And Rory, even though to me at times it wasn't amazing with the exception of the driver, he wanted it so much more so, I think, than Brooks did, and he just had more fight in him. And I think that is a very telling sign going forward, is that Rory knows that he's I think by far one of the most talented and gifted golfers in the game today, but he's got to go out and really force it, impose his will. I mean, he's got to be tough. He's got to be a little bit tougher mentally, and I think that's exactly what we saw on that Sunday. And one of the things that he said to Tim Barter at the Sky Card afterwards, when Brooks earlier in the day was talking about increasing his lead as world #1, Rory says, "You're going to have to go through me first." And I tell you, if that's not a sign of what Rory's intentions are, then I have no idea what else he can say, because Rory, he came to life that final round, and it was highly impressive.
It was noticeable as well in commentary. I think it was Wayne Riley who might have said at one point that there's barely been a word between these two all day. And that was an atmosphere, in a good way from a McIlroy point of view, I think. And in McIlroy's post-round press conference on the Sunday night, he said that in that WGC final round against Koepka a month ago, he tried to treat the Sunday as if it was a Thursday or Friday, tried to treat it like any other round, whereas the weekend he came in with the mindset that this is different. It is a different kind of atmosphere, and I need to embrace that a little bit, which was an interesting kind of shift. There is a kind of an anomaly here if you try to analyse McIlroy's season, in that he's played some of his most consistent golf. He would say his putting even has improved dramatically this year, and yet there is Portrush, which kind of looms large, and maybe to a lesser extent the Masters. Can you talk to us about what you see from McIlroy under pressure?
I see, up until Sunday, I see a golfer that like I said, the game comes easy to him. So he's got the ability and the confidence to go out there and treat it like it's no big deal at times. But I also think if you really want to break it down, he tried to do too much of that at Portrush. And I think he would admit that. He's said a little bit about that. But the Open at Portrush, I think that was a big eye opener for him. That, listen, I have to acknowledge when it is a big moment, and I have to acknowledge to myself that this is really important. This is a big deal, and to not just be, as easygoing, and get a little more tight-lipped, get a little more selfish with your time. You don't need to have the banter between you and your opponent. You guys know that off the golf course you're friends, but on the golf course, you guys are there to beat each other up, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And I think that is probably something that he learned again at East Lake, is that, listen, we can be the fastest of friends off the golf course, no big deal. But on the golf course, if I want to beat you, I have to kind of change myself mentally and get in a zone to get the best out of myself. And there's going to be days where you just wake up and Rory can fall out of bed when he's feeling it and shoot 62, 63 anywhere in the world. But when he's not feeling it and he gets into a pressure situation that he said, he's going to have to bear down, and it becomes more businesslike. And that's what he was. He was so much more businesslike on Sunday, and that's including the finishing of the third round and the final round. It was impressive, to say the least.
I can check the stats and I can see he's number one in driving, he's number one off the tee, he's 12th across the course of the season approach to green, he's 24th when it comes to putting across the season. So we can all kind of check the stats. You're often out there walking the fairways watching him. His driving aside, and we know how good that is, away from stats, what's your innate sense or feel for where the rest of his game is at?
I don't think I have any fears. I think that the one thing that we've talked about, and unfortunately probably ad nauseum, is the wedge game. If he can get the wedge game a little bit more consistently, where he's able to go out and dial in those shots from inside of 125 yards on a consistent basis because of where he drives it. If he can go out there and start hitting different shots like we saw him do at East Lake, then he's really going to be difficult to beat. Now, there's going to be the odd week where the putter doesn't cooperate. There's going to be the odd week where he might drive it offline a little bit. But if he can get more consistent from 125 yards and in, I think he's got the potential to be a stronghold on number one again. Just because I think he is consistently better off the tee than Brooks Koepka, because Brooks doesn't change the way that he goes about it. It's usually just one speed, and that's all out off the tee. And that's really different than what he does with his irons. Brooks is able to flight some of his irons down. He grew up in Florida, South Florida, where it blows all the time. But he doesn't really do the same thing with the driver. In fact, I saw it at the PGA, the final 9 holes, when he was struggling to find the fairway, playing back into the wind. He never really teed it down low and just tried to hit something out there chasing. Well, Rory does. Rory can sit there and he can flight it down and he can get it out there low and chasing, and he also tee it high and let it fly. But I think Rory, because he is such the driver is such an asset, I think he would have every opportunity to overtake Brooks Koepka and start winning majors again and become world number one and stay that way for a long time. He, as I said before, the game looks so easy. It comes to him so easy. As announcers, we get frustrated when he shoots 66 because we're all looking at it going, well, that had 62 written all over it. What happened? But that's just the game of golf. But that's how good he is. He makes 66s and 67s look very, very ordinary.
Yeah. I guess if we're taking a slightly wider look at the season that's been, it's, the Masters invariably gets mentioned for obvious reasons. Woods has announced today that he has undergone surgery on his knee, not major surgery, but he had a procedure last week during the Tour Championship. And he says, I'm walking now. I hope to resume practice in the next few weeks. And he's planning on playing in Japan in October. The Masters, we kind of thought, my goodness, we're going to get this amazing Indian summer here. We're going to see Woods for 2, 3, who knows, maybe even 4 years really competing. Fast forward a couple of months, the picture looks a little gloomier. This time last year we had the Tour Championship win, which maybe pointed to what happened in Augusta. We don't quite have that now. When you're seeing him, post Augusta, Rich, and he's out playing, and he kind of just looks like he's gone backwards massively. What are you seeing? Is like physically, is he looking okay to you? Does it seem to differ on different days? What's your read on what's going on there? Because it's very hard to judge from afar with Woods in particular.
Well, it's interesting. What knee did he have surgery? I'm going to say it was his left knee. I'm
that
just
left knee again.
That.
Yeah. The trusty left knee.
Okay, so the left knee. So I think if we saw him, about 10 days after the Masters, we saw him walking into doing something media-wise with Golf TV, the company that he's with. We saw him walking very gingerly. It looked like there was something hurt, and everybody was speculating the back. And to be fair, every time I saw him, it looked like the back.
Yeah.
Everything, it looked like the back. But it's funny now that you say he had knee surgery. My first instinct was got to be the left knee, because if you look at where he struggled, he's flipping his hands at the ball because it's not because his back is flinching, but you can't get to your left side. If you can't get to your left side, you got to figure out a way to throw that club at the ball some way. To get it to go in the direction you want it to. And so your ball striking with the left, if your left knee's out, your ball striking is going to suffer immeasurably unless you hang back on your left side, on your right side, which I never saw him do once. That would have never have come into my mind. But, physically, if he can get back into a position where he can go back and forth and put enough pressure on the left knee and I don't say, because what he used to do was kind of snap that left knee through impact. Well, he can't do that anymore. I kind of look at him and hope that he figures out a way to maybe not rotate his shoulders as much, maybe not get him all the way back to, they go past 90%, or 90 degrees, I should say. If he can get it to maybe 90 degrees with the driver and yet everything else is a little bit shorter, and figure out how to be just a little bit more dynamic through the golf ball, to kind of help relieve some of the back pressure and the knee pressure. But, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know what to expect from him going forward. I think that obviously there's going to be, if he says there's going to be 2 or 3 weeks of rehab, it should be more like 5 or 6 weeks. Because rehab always takes longer than what you're hoping for. But, there's no doubt from a standpoint mentally wise and the understanding of how to play the game and how to get the golf ball in the hole as quickly as possible, Tiger still is as dangerous as ever. But if you can't do it physically, if you can't walk 72 holes and not feel pain, then what chance do you really have? Because I don't care how tough a competitor you are, if you hit a shot and you feel pain going up your knee and leg, what he did in 2008 at the U.S. Open is still mind-blowing. But listen, there's only so many times you can do that in your life before finally you're like, you know what, I've had enough of that. And how many surgeries has he had? How much pain has he had throughout his career? More than anybody will possibly ever know. And, hats off to him for sticking it out as long as he has. I find it pretty remarkable. But he's got to figure out something to do physically where he can be very flexible all the time and play pain-free. And I don't know what he's going to do about that, because every time he talks about going home and getting stronger, that means lifting weights. And I'm sorry, but muscle weighs more than fat. I'd say take a couple of months off and hang out with Shane Lowry. Go drink some beer and chill.
Oh, don't worry, Shane's plenty strong as well. Where does Portrush rank for you, I guess? Because we talked about it in very insular terms over here. It almost felt like a local event in some respects. When we're reviewing the season, is that a personal highlight, or did it kind of feel a touch flat, given that Lowry won so convincingly?
No, for me it was what Brooks did at the PGA. Those two are on par with each other as the best performances of the year.
Right.
People are going to think that I'm crazy for not putting Tiger Woods there, but I look at what Tiger Woods did as a culmination of a couple of things. I think he had a collapse from Brooks and from Molinari, which opened the door, because Tiger would have had to start taking some chances, but all of a sudden he finds himself, in the lead, and then once you give him the lead at Augusta on the back nine, he's going to be hard to slow down. Yeah. But I think what Shane did at Portrush to me was simply amazing, because after we saw him play as well as he did on Friday, and what we heard of him in the press conferences about being nervous and having everybody cheering for him, going from green to tee, and he started off so hot, and then all of a sudden it got to be a little bit tougher because he felt the weight of the country on his shoulders. And for him to be able to put that in the back of his mind and go out and play unbelievably well on Saturday, when you have a big lead as he did, it's almost harder to go out there, because that it's yours to lose. And he even made mention of it. He was thinking about it midway through the round, and how could you not? But for him, because I think he understood what it would mean to not only him, but him and his career, all of his friends, all of his family. I mean, he wanted it so bad, but it wasn't going to be given to him. He had to go out there and earn it and take it. And for him to go through shot by shot and just stay as focused as he did, that to me shows that he is so strong mentally. It's even more so than what people think. I mean, because if you think about how badly you want something, and you're playing in front of everybody that you know and you love, and you want it, sometimes that's when it's the absolute most difficult thing to do. And he made it look fairly simple. Yeah. And it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination. So that performance to me, it goes head to head with what Brooks Koepka did, because Brooks just steamrolled everybody, and to stay out in front from the opening tee shot all the way through the 72nd hole, that to me on that golf course was pretty astonishing as well. But Shane, it was astonishing in a different level. But I got to say, I was so glad to be a part of it, from basically the opening tee shot to the final putt hole, because I loved watching what he did, and you couldn't have written a better script. Just a last question then about where the game is, and it's a multifaceted one. You've got a pretty interesting, I think, emerging group of different personalities, which is a plus, and Tiger vaguely back in the mix is definitely a plus. Hopefully he can continue to be so. There's the condensed schedule. People aren't so sure about that. And then there's also, I'd be kind of most interested in this. There was a point Adam Scott made after Medina a couple of weeks ago where he was just saying, we really need to have a look at where golf's going. The driver has kind of been ruined. It's the most forgiving club in the bag. You literally just take it out and bang it. So the best driver is not all that different from the worst driver. The ball goes way too far. And this is me speaking now here, not Scott. But then it seems like when I watch on TV, Rich, too often I'm just watching, these guys into their par fours with their second shots, and they're just hitting these kind of chicken wing, hold off wedge shots in from 160 yards in. It's the same kind of golf over and over again.
I don't know. I mean, are we going to have to look at the equipment in a serious way, or do you kind of like the modern game and the way it's played?
I'd love to be able to look at to change the equipment. I think most every player would say this who is knowledgeable about the game. The driver head, it's oversized, and you just look down at it, and it just exudes confidence because it's the biggest club in your bag, and you just don't feel like you can hit it anywhere else but straight. And if you get matched up with a shaft that matches your swing and you get the right amount of loft on it, you can put the right golf ball in there, you can maximize the spin, you can make everything as efficient as you possibly can. So you can take a bad driver on the PGA Tour and make him into a pretty good driver without much work, more than just by tweaking the equipment. But to take a bad wedge player and make him a good one, to take a bad putter and make him a good one, now you're talking about a different set of circumstances. The golf ball, it really needs to be rolled back. I'm a big proponent of having two different sets of rules, one for the amateurs, one for the pros, having different equipment. And I'd mostly do the equipment side of it as well. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening anytime soon. Now, you can take a golf course and you can make it just like East Lake, where the fairways they're wide, but they're not overly wide. But you hit in the rough, it goes straight down to the bottom. You can't control the golf ball out of there. And you make the greens as perfect as you can, but they've got a little bit of slope to them. They're a little on the speedy side with a little bit of grain, and all of a sudden you're on a perfect surface and you can't make a putt. And then you start thinking about, why can't I make a putt? So that starts affecting you mentally. I just think that there's different ways of course setup, but you can't, there is no template for it. You've got to take each course as it comes to you. And sometimes, I'm sorry, but guys are just going to shoot 20, 25 under par at a golf course because it never blows and it rains. And so you're just going to be hitting it as far as you can, finding the fairway, hitting it as high as you can with a wedge, hitting it close and making a putt. That's the nature of it. But until you start looking at the equipment, I think firsthand, you've got to get more creative with course setup. And I just don't know. I don't know if the tours are willing to do that. I mean, I think the players like making birdies. They like taking out driver and bashing it. But to me, it's incredible. I have all the respect in the world for them. But let's take them out there with a persimmon driver and a Balata golf ball and a little bit of wind, and let's see who can play the best. Let's see who can control the golf ball. Let's see how you guys can figure it all out. Can you change your game on the fly? And there'll be players, I think, that will absolutely be able to do it. I think that if you change some of the equipment, I think guys like Rory, I think guys like DJ, I think even Koepka, Justin Thomas for sure would flourish in it. But then you'd have, I think Jason Day would struggle. I think there's a couple other players that would struggle with it because their game is predicated on power and power alone. They don't move the golf ball. They don't flight it down. They don't move it left to right. You would be able to definitely a little bit more of a separation between who the best players in the world are versus who's not. And you don't quite get that now because, like I said, equipment helps them all.
Yeah. Rich, thanks so much for joining us. Great work on Sky all year. I'm sure we'll talk to you again at some stage in the future. Much appreciated.
You got it. Anytime. Thanks.